Welcome everybody to the American College Center for Women webcast, How to Successfully Navigate Difficult Client Conversations. I'm joined by an amazing panel today of experts on how to navigate difficult conversations. Our first panelist is Chia-Li, and she is the Associate Provost of Graduate Programs at the college. And she's an Associate Professor of Succession Planning at the college and has held several senior management positions in Fortune 500 companies. She's a frequent speaker about succession planning at national conferences and published 3 award-winning books. We also have Julie Fortin, who is a partner at North Star Financial Planning, a wealth management firm in New Hampshire, where she specializes in financial life planning and financial psychology. Prior to beginning her career in financial planning, Julie held various roles within investment banking and investment management in Boston. Julie holds a Master of Finance degree from Suffolk University and a Bachelor of Science in Business Management and Finance from Westfield State University. She's a CFP and a Certified Financial Behavior Specialist and a Certified Financial Transitionist. We also are joined by Meghaan Lurtz, and Dr. Lurtz is a professor of practice at Kansas State University, where she teaches courses for the Advanced Financial Planning Certificate Program, a lecturer at Columbia University, where she teaches financial psychology, and an on-staff writer and a researcher of financial psychology at Kisses.com. Her research interests vary as she studies both practitioners of financial planning, as well as financial planning and financial therapy practices and interventions. Her research and expertise have been featured in Journal of Financial Planning, Journal of Consumer Affairs, Financial Planning Review, Wall Street Journal, BBC, Million Dollar Roundtable, and New York Magazine. So, and I'm Hilary Fiorella, and I lead the Center for Women at the American College, and I'm thrilled to be joined by these experts today as we talk about navigating difficult client conversations. Before we get into the meat of the webcast today, I just want to ask you to hold the date, March 7th and 8th next year, for our Women Working in Wealth Summit. Jumping off of our success of last year's summit, we will be in New York again and hope to see you there. It'll be a day of content for practitioners as well as leaders in the industry about how to lift up women, eliminate obstacles, and move towards gender parity. In terms of, and on the next slide, you'll see a link to our toolkit. So if you want to know a little bit more about how you can help women lift women, create gender parity, we have a toolkit for that. So you can visit our website, Women Working Wealth, and check out our toolkit.
For being here. I'm delighted to be here. I want to talk just briefly about terminology. We use these terms all the time. You know, there's behavioral finance, there's financial therapy, there's behavioral economics, there's financial psychology. Now there's the psychology of financial planning. And just like, what is all of that and why is that even important? So from behavioral economics, which is truly a general study of decision-making, not even necessarily about finance, but just a general study of decision-making, they sort of notice that there's 2 styles of biases. There's cognitive biases, and these are stemming from just the human's poor statistical brain. And then there's emotional biases, which these, as it sounds, deal more with like feelings, how somebody feels about something. And while, nudges can oftentimes get us around some of the cognitive biases, nudges don't work as well with some of the emotional biases, and honestly don't even work super well with all of the cognitive biases. Not to mention that both, like maybe 2 biases are going on at one time. And then so when it comes to like behavioral finance, this is behavioral economics principles. So decision-making principles applied directly to financial situations. And so a lot of what we see here is the cognitive bias stuff that, why do people get nervous about loss aversion, or why do they, how are they behaving in one type of market over the other? Then there's financial psychology, which is leaning more towards the emotional biases, leaning more towards, what it is that we think and feel, and how does that impact how we behave. And now we have a place called financial therapy as well. And Julie and I are well versed in the land of financial therapy. And this is even kind of brings in different aspects. So in financial therapy, we care about the relationship between individuals. We care about a lot of some of the emotional stuff, but that doesn't mean that we don't care about the cognitive stuff. And in many ways, many of the programs that have been developed by behavioral economists, which I love, again, most of the time they're trying to go around the problem, like automatic 401ks. We sign you up, you don't think about it, 20 years later, you've got $2 million, success. There are other problems, though, that we need to actually go through them. We can't just navigate around them. And a lot of times this is where financial therapy comes in. Like behavioral economics deals a lot with macro solutions. Financial therapy, if you'll think about it that way, deals a lot with micro solutions. Like, what is this individual, this client sitting in front of me? What are they going through? What do they need? And how can I help to facilitate that? So we use these terms oftentimes interchangeably, but they actually mean very different things. And very different lines or strains of research come out of each one. So why that sort of matters to today, and the direction that we're going. One of the first, we thought this would work well, kind of like presenting in case studies. And so a common thing that I talk to financial planners about, a common thing that I've even seen in some financial therapy work, is when you've got, two individuals, they're married, or at least, they've got a kid together. And one thinks education planning, I need to put all my money in education. My kids are going to Harvard. I didn't really like paying off my student loans. I want to put all my money into education planning. The other one thinks, no. They can take out student loans. It doesn't hurt anybody. We're going to put all of our money into retirement. I want to retire one day and not have to worry. And so oftentimes we have like a divided household between these two issues. And there's pressure, to figure out what to do. And depending on, so we've got definitely cognitive biases coming in. We've definitely got some emotional biases coming in. And when you're the financial planner sitting in front of these two people, it can feel kind of weird to know what to do. I mean, maybe financially you think, oh, there's a clear answer here, but that isn't always how it feels emotionally. And that can be the more difficult part, and some of what we're going to get into more today. And so the first thing, in these situations where we know there's going to be conflict, relieve some of the pressure. There isn't always a need to solve that right now. If that matters, if it comes up in the first meeting with them, maybe you're just doing some general planning with this couple and it comes up right away that there's going to be an issue. You can always say, hey, like, I can tell that there's a lot that needs to be talked about. I'm totally game to talk about that, but we don't have to solve it today. Let's come back to it when we have more solved, or when there's another sort of reason to come back and start on that issue. You can also set timelines, like, okay, for 6 months, we're going to really focus on education, or for 6 years, we're really going to focus on education. And then we're going to back away from that. That can help people. So to just kind of removing the pressure to decide right now, and also removing for the pressure that once we decide that that's just how it has to be. Because oftentimes, I mean, that isn't it at all. I mean, we don't do a financial plan, we do financial planning. The whole thing is pivoting back and forth. Another thing that can be really nice, when working with a couple that's stressed out and, working from a place of, we'll talk about it here in a second. Julie's going to talk a little bit more about it. But these two people have arrived at this meeting with two very different backgrounds. I talk about my husband and I a lot because we grew up very differently. I have 3 brothers. He's an only child. Justin is kind of a silver spoon kid. I had a pretty nice life, but there was a bunch of us. And so when we decide on financial things, my husband is very much kind of like instantaneous gratification. He really doesn't like waiting. I am very much more patient, very much more sharing oriented. And so when we have now arrived at this precipice where we are married and having to make financial decisions together, and yet how we were raised runs into every conversation that we have. And so if you have two individuals, again, maybe one was stressed out about school when they were younger, the other one didn't have to worry about that, or maybe the other one didn't really so much care about student loans, or maybe the other one saw their parents working all the time, and so retirement is really important for them. Unless we really kind of understand the person's story, and unless we allow the person to understand their story. I've spent a lot of time thinking about my financial history. My husband probably thinks he feels too much time thinking about his financial history, thanks to me. But when we're bringing two people together, taking some time to explore, tell me a little bit more about what you think about that. Well, that's interesting. Okay, so I can tell that education is important to you. Tell me, where you think that came from. Just doing a little bit more exploration there. Some of that relates to motivational interviewing principles. Either way, these two individuals are going to have to make a change. They're trying to save more money for one thing or another. Motivational interviewing is a counseling method that enhances the individual's motivation to change. Another way, if this particularly becomes very stressful, another way to sort of navigate this is there's a practice called nonviolent communication. And I bring both of these things up, not because they are magical, but because nonviolent communication, you can literally go find a training on that, on motivational interviewing. Anybody can go get a training on that. And there are things like the Financial Therapy Association, the financial transitionists, the money quotient people, the registered life planning people. All of these people also touch on these principles. So there's many ways to get this type of education. And so I bring it up in that it is a really great education and can help in these moments. Nonviolent communication is a 4-step process where we talk about observations, then we go into feelings, then we go into needs, and then we go into requests. And you can either help the client to do that, or you can you can send them home with a little bit of homework that's related to that. And so it's all kind of in how the advisor feels that they want to be a part of this facilitation and understanding what are the money stories, how is that impacting our decision making. And then the last point I want to make, and I think Julie will talk about this even more, that there's a difference between collaboration and compromise. Why is it important to understand these histories? Why is that important to sort of consider or weigh that information when we're going in to make these financial decisions? Compromise, we think, causes a bit of a problem. I went to dinner last night with my husband, and I had really wanted Chinese and he had really wanted Italian. And so we compromised and went for Thai. We both sort of lost so that we could get along in this moment. Compromise is a very common way to solve issues in our personal lives and just generally. We don't think that this works with financial problems, which is why then we see the same financial argument happen again and again and again. Oftentimes it escalates, it gets worse and worse and worse. 1 minute we were upset about retirement versus education, and now we're thinking about divorce because when they talk about retirement and education, it feels like my spouse doesn't want to spend time with me. Whoa. Like extreme escalation, but it happens. It happens. And we think part of the reason that it happens is because we keep compromising. You have to remember, at the end of the day, money is a scarce resource. It is a natural place for conflict. And in many times with compromise, we're kind of choosing, well, you lose a little bit and I'll lose a little bit. With money, nobody ever wants to lose, ever. And so it's important to think about collaborating over compromising. And in order to collaborate, we really have to know what emotional things are going on. What stories are we telling ourselves? What information has led us to this moment, so that we can decide, kind of comb through what matters and what doesn't, so that we can find a collaborative solution that's a win-win, so that when we leave this argument, we don't have to continually revisit it. Certainly as the financial planner, again, you can always set the table that, hey, we're going to do this for 6 months and then we're going to pivot, or, we'll check in with how we feel. This is different than just saying, well, agree to lose, and we're just going to go with it. So in how we set up the discussion, how we explain to the client that this is what's most important, that I'm serving your, and we'll talk about this more today too, that I'm serving your coupleship, not necessarily the individuals, but in order to serve the coupleship well, I do have to understand the individuals, and I want to understand the individuals, and likely the individuals want to understand one another too. And certainly most people really enjoy learning about themselves. One way to do that, Julie's going to talk about this a little bit more, is to explore money scripts, especially related to retirement and education. These are two loaded topics just based on how somebody grew up and what they believe about money. People that believe, that borrowing is bad. Do you actually think you're going to get them to, like, they're always going to save for their kids' education because they don't want their kid to take out student loans because they believe that that's evil. Understanding like where that come from, how we understand debt and things like that can be incredibly important for then how we develop this collaborative solution. Julie?
Meghan, that was hugely helpful. Before we move too far away from financial therapy, we had a comment from one of our participants that the Financial Therapy Association excludes those who are commission-based. And certainly life insurance is loaded with emotion, seems like an idiotic exclusion. So given that, do you have, can financial therapy and the concepts that you've talked about be applied as it relates to folks who are commission-based in the insurance business?
I certainly think that emotion is a huge part of the insurance business. There are important reasons that are in place for why that exclusion currently sits that way. One of those being that financial therapy, in working with someone in that way, in doing financial therapy, not necessarily doing financial planning and just like, giving somebody a money script, or doing financial planning and understanding that somebody is acting from some particular cognitive or emotional bias. I'm talking about working with someone in a deeply empathic and therapeutic way, and how that can absolutely be manipulated and that it should not be. And so they're at this point in time, putting in the highest and most protected ethical standards that we can. That's not to say that I don't think insurance people are unethical. Everybody needs insurance. It's like asking, do you need a light bulb? Yes. Are the people that sell light bulbs bad? No. It's an important aspect of a healthy and well-balanced financial life. But some of the places that the Financial Therapy Association goes, and some of the work that financial therapists do definitely goes to a place which wouldn't necessarily be appropriate for anybody that can receive commissions. So if you have other questions or comments about that, or you want to talk to me about that, I'm totally open to anybody who wants to have that discussion. I can also point you in other directions for if you want to learn or be aware of this information. Like I mentioned that earlier, that motivational interviewing is actually something that you can go do whenever you want. They have trainings all the time. Nonviolent communication, same thing. So if learning some of these communication practices is something that you want to do, this is not information that you can't access. You wouldn't necessarily be able to access it through the Financial Therapy Association. Although you can still be a member of the Financial Therapy Association, you just won't be able to certify as a financial therapist because it means something different. Hope that's helpful.
That was so helpful. Thank you so much for answering that question. And now I think we were going to hear from Julie about exploring money scripts.
Yes, absolutely. So just to kind of set the stage a little bit in terms of how I think about these things. So we kind of have the technical aspects of the services that we deliver. So the what, versus the functional, the how, the when. And so there really is this shift occurring between the two, kind of more into the side of how we're delivering the information to clients to be most effective, which I think is really helpful in terms of, couple conflict and when emotions come up with money. And so in terms of what clients want, the research and surveys continue to show that has these elements of financial therapy that encompass both financial psychology and behavioral finance, these therapeutic tools. These elements are becoming increasingly important to clients in terms of how they want their financial professional to be working with them. There's just a study released this week, excuse me, a study released this week from eMoney, showing that clients are really asking for more from advisors in terms of, someone who's willing to work on their financial anxieties, their financial behaviors, their attitudes around money, and really someone who's really willing to take the time to identify areas where clients aren't moving forward with their financial plan, their financial actions, and help them to actually move forward and implement. And so what are some of the ways that we can do that? One of the tools that we have access to is by what's called money scripts. So it's really, essentially we're talking about behavioral change with clients and some coaching skills. So sure, there are those clients that come in and they have kind of their one or two action items financially that they want help with. They're open to receiving technical information from you. And as the expert, you deliver that information. They are ready to change. They implement those, actions, behaviors, whatever it may be, and they go on their way. However, most clients that come into our office are not ready and willing to implement all of the advice that we're giving. So they may come in for one aspect of financial planning, let's say education funding, or they want a retirement projection, know that they're on track for retirement. But you notice a big gap, where it's a family with young children and they don't have life insurance or things like that. And so you kind of step in with some items for them, but they may not be ready to implement those. And so what are some of the tools that we can use as financial professionals to help clients in this area of behavioral change? So in terms of money scripts, it's really, there's lots of different ways you can go about doing this. It's essentially at its heart a conversation with clients about their money history. So you could simply open up the conversation by asking, what is your earliest money memory? Or what was money like for you growing up? One tool that we use here is called the money script inventory. And so I would refer folks here to an excellent book called Facilitating Financial Health that really walks through a lot of these tools, including the money script inventory. And that book is by Brad and Ted Quantz and Rick Kaler. And so the money script inventory, you can get it online in paper form. You can also, it's available now electronically through a company called Data Points, if you're looking to have it more automated. But it essentially, each of us has our own history with money, our experiences in our life that shaped, our thoughts and attitudes around money. And so these experiences are called financial flashpoints. And, as we move forward, these attitudes about money and beliefs that we have, unfortunately for us as humans, a lot of these are developed when we're children. And so they're kind of half-baked. They're not fully developed. A lot of them conflict with each other. And so we kind of just take these and move forward into adulthood and never, they're unconscious. We never think to question them. And so what the money script inventory can do is really bring out some awareness for clients of what it is they believe about money, their attitudes, their thoughts, their beliefs. And so while there's hundreds, if not thousands, of various money scripts that each of us have, the money script inventory breaks it down into 4 separate categories. And so we're not trying to, assess, we're not trying to, determine financial, anything as far as clinical, we're not trying to. It's really just for clients to become aware for themselves. As Meghaan mentioned, folks love learning more about themselves. And when have individuals or clients ever had the opportunity to work with somebody to really examine these money anxieties that they may be having, for example? And so the 4 categories that the scripts fall into typically are money avoidance. And so these are scripts that we've all heard, like money is the root of all evil. Rich people are greedy, scripts like that. And so you can see how this could limit an individual or a couple with their financial success if you are carrying scripts that, may be having you avoid setting up a budget, or, perhaps giving too much money away. Because if you have the belief that money is evil, why would you ever want to accumulate a lot of money? Another money script, which is really common particularly in our country, is money focus. It used to be called money worship, but with clients, we call it money focus. And these are scripts such as, more money will make you happier. There can never be enough money. Money is power, things like that. And so you can see, each one of these money scripts, none of them are good or bad. They all have good and bad traits associated with them. And so you can kind of envision what, for a money focus script, what some of those pros and cons would be. For example, a focus on money may encourage you to save more. However, it also may have you become a little bit more of a workaholic, in anticipation of kind of gaining more. Another script is money status. And so these are folks who think that their net worth is tied to their self-worth. They like to buy new. They don't like news things. It's kind of a little bit more showy. And so again, pros and cons to this script. And the 4th money script is money vigilance. So these are a lot of folks, particularly in the wealth management field. A lot of clients that come in are vigilant, which is why they're coming to see us, right? They've amassed, some funds. They need help investing. They want to give charitably. They want to gift to their children, whatever it may be. And so there are some obvious pros to having a money vigilance, script or scripts, such as, you need to save for a rainy day, scripts like that. However, these are also folks that do kind of run the risk of becoming more financially anxious. And so as the advisor, as the advisor, it's important to know these about your clients. And so you might introduce something like this, not as part of data gathering, but after you establish some trust with the client and you have some rapport, to kind of let them know this is something we do. If it resonates with you, feel free to do it. Most clients will, again, because they like to learn about themselves. And so it really sets the stage for you as the financial professional to kind of have a little glance into where these clients might be heading and some potential conflicts that they might have between the two of them. If it's a couple, if they hold various money scripts that are in conflict with one another. I mean, a lot of us hold scripts that are in conflict within ourselves, and then you add another individual into the relationship. And so it's a prime area for conflict with couples.
Julie, that was great. And you touched on data gathering as part of, working with couples or clients. And I'll ask this to anybody on the panel. One of our participants asked, do you have your clients complete a communication profile so that you get a feel for how they like to communicate or what their style is?
I do, or we do here at my firm. All the advisors here where I am, we've gone through the Sudden Money Institute training to become financial transitionists. And so a big part of that training involves a communication style preference. And so we give those to every client and have conversations around that. So right from the get-go, when we start working with clients, we know how they like to receive information or how they don't like to receive information. So that we can better serve them essentially and cater to each person. If one person tends to be kind of a top-down person, kind of give me give me the recommendation or give me the highlight. And then if I need to know, I'll ask you additional details. Where other people want to start at the bottom, give me all the details and then what your recommendation is. And so you can see how that would be really important to know, particularly with working with couples or an individual, so that you can better serve them. So yes, we do.
Great. So now I've been waiting for Chia-Li to talk about her case study, because this is some good stuff. And I think maybe some of you on the call will be able to relate to this case study.
Right. So thank you, Hilary. So as I enter the financial planning profession, I'm going to say this is my early experience, meaning I was in year 1 or year 2, in between year 1 and year 2. And I was a career changer from a publicly traded company. So I really don't necessarily have any financial planning experience other than working with the CFP. I did pass the CFP before I entered the financial planning profession, but I really don't necessarily know what to do other than the experience that I got from that particular CFP in the comprehensive planning side of the things. And so they are usually, when I meet with a client in the early year of my career, I have a set agenda. I'm very organized. I will send the email to client, here's our agenda, and I'm very organized. As they come in, they know exactly what we're supposed to be doing that day. But one day, I had a client came in as a referral from an existing client. This client was a married couple. The husband is about 30 at the time that I met him, and the wife is about 28, so about 2 years apart. But they do have very young children, age 1, 3, and 5. The husband actually owns a real estate development company and was quite successful based on his own experience. And his wife basically just stay home with children. And the couple came to my office specifically. They tell me that they need some help with their finance, right? So I don't know if you heard clients say this to you, it's really not specific. They need help with finance. So as we entered our initial meeting, the husband was so proud, describing his successful business. And he went on, talked about approximately 10 minutes or so. And then I turned to his wife because I wanted to give equal attention to the spouse as well. So I turned to her and asked about, so why are you here today? What would you like to talk about? And to my surprise, she immediately broke down. And you could only imagine, at that time, I didn't have much of planning experience with clients. This was not on my agenda. And I had no idea what to do. I literally froze. And I wasn't sure if I should reach out, comfort her, and touch her. I didn't know if I could do that. And it took me literally 2 minutes, because I was in the freezing mode, to figure it out that let me just pass on a tissue box for her. It just took by a little bit of time. And at that time, I'm buying time, but I still didn't know what to do, what to say. So in that 2 minutes, I decided to just throw away my agenda. And I was curious about, where did I miss in my CFP education? When your client is in this distressed situation, what should I do? So I ended up spending the entire meeting just listen to them. And after the meeting, I asked my managing principal, because I was young in terms of experience. I asked him what I should have done, what I could have done differently. And he actually didn't provide me with any direction. And I think that's the difference between men and women in terms of how they approach clients. Women tend to, in my experience, have a very high observation about what's going on with clients. The next thing I knew was that in my office, that the joke of the week was that Chia-Li made her client cry. So I was publicly shamed. It was a public shaming, if you will. But I think the real issue was I really didn't know what to do in that situation. So I'm going to turn to our practitioner expert, Julie, to kind of coach me through what I could have done differently in that situation.
Gosh, I feel like we've all been there. right? The circumstances may be different, but I imagine there's not an advisor out there, once you've gotten through a few meetings with a client, that they wouldn't say they didn't have a moment of, not knowing what to do with a client in front of you. And so the things that stood out to me about what you said were that once you kind of settled in and thought about what was happening, that you threw away your agenda and just decided to listen. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing you can do when something happens kind of unexpectedly, is to just drop your own agenda. It's a great reminder in those moments that the meeting is the client's. It's not our meeting. And so, even reaching out to clients before the meeting to say, what would you like on your agenda? Sometimes that doesn't necessarily happen if it's for the prospect, but so I think kind of taking those moments to put your own agenda mentally aside and taking some time to sit there. And, I would kind of offer as a suggestion, something that has taken me a long time to kind of get into this space, but I use those moments because, I have been taught, and it's been hard learned on my part, taught to let the silence be. And sometimes that's really hard to do. And so when an emotion comes up, I'll say, I think the worst thing you can do is meet an emotion with technical data, right? So when somebody's emotional or stressed, their thinking part of their brain has gone offline. So anything you say, technically at that point is not going to be heard. So remembering that, and also kind of letting people have their emotions. I mean, I would argue that if a client breaks down in your office, they already feel a certain amount of safety with you if they feel they can do that with you in the room. And so I would, personally, take that as an opportunity when the client is breaking down to first tune in with myself. How am I feeling in this moment? How is this circumstance making me feel? And as you do that over time, you start to develop kind of, more of a spidey sense, in a professional context of, what's happening in the room, sometimes even before it's happened. And so to keep myself in that quiet place and letting the client have their emotion, I will use that as an opportunity to check in with myself, and then thank the client. Thank you for sharing that with me. Instead of, this is something that they do teach, in training for financial transitions, which is really all about clients who have both a financial and an emotional transition happening in their lives. And so as far as crying and tissues, part of the training is good to have tissues on the table so clients know that they're there should they need a tissue, but you don't even have to offer it, because sometimes it can kind of work against the fact that you want the client to have their emotions. Emotions are good, it's information. And so kind of just sitting, maybe looking at the tissues so the clients know that they're there, but you don't even need to hand it to them. And so, yeah, so I commend you on, kind of hitting the big items in your prospect meeting there, as far as, quieting down and putting your agenda aside. And then, when the client's ready, using some open-ended questions to, or, in some of the information that Meghaan shared as far as motivational interviewing, nonviolent communication, some of those skills to kind of get more information from the client. So thank you for sharing that information with me. Instead of saying why, why questions can be a little disarming. So, how, and, how did this come to be, or tell me more about, tell me more about where these emotions are coming from. Things like that, kind of opening the table so the client, and then just sitting back and being quiet. And then I'll also say kind of normalizing for clients in this time that, the fact that, whatever it is that they're upset about. If in this case, if it's kind of a difference between the husband and wife and their attitudes about money, and one's more aggressive than the other, just kind of normalizing for clients that that's common and to be expected, and that it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with them or anything wrong with their relationship. I think things like that can go a long way to making clients feel, I don't know if you've experienced clients coming into your office and when you're first getting to know one another, there's kind of this sense of, how are we doing? How do we compare to other people? Right. So right off the bat, you're letting them know this is common, nothing to be ashamed about. Just by the way you're acting, it's like you have the tissues there. You're just sitting quietly. You're just sending messages to the client that it's a safe place. This is totally normal. Feel free to share your emotions. Tell me more about that when you're ready. Clients, and kind of back to the money scripts, clients, we have our own experiences and our history around money. And so we bring that into these relationships, and really just opening up the conversation for those money beliefs and money history conversations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with everything Julie said. And I would just say, to do quick bullet points, because I know we have another section that we want to talk about, and I want to make sure we have time for that. But, normalizing is really important. So having the tissues on the table automatically says people cry here without you having to say people cry here. So I think that can be a really good one. Once they kind of jump into the emotion, a common thing that is taught in crisis situations is to ask about their feelings and ask about their behavior. So gosh, thank you for being, feeling safe enough to express, what's going on. Would it be fair to say that you're feeling stressed? Tell me a little bit more about that. And they may say, oh yeah, I am stressed, or actually I'm angry, or this other thing. And then now you can ask them a few more questions about whatever it is that they have said is their emotion that they're feeling. The other thing is you can ask, how is this impacting your decision-making? Or what has your decision-making been like until now? That can be really, really useful for people. And just respecting that they have thought about it. They didn't just arrive here and all this is happening today. They've probably thought about what's going on for a really long time. We know from the trans theoretical model of change that only 20% of people are in action mode. But you spend 80% of that time thinking about, knowing about, considering this issue, what's going on, I'm not quite sure, what do I want to do? So by the time they've gotten there to your office to talk about this, they've thought about it. They've thought about it. And so simply asking, what has been your decision-making process? What's this been like for you? Man, it seems like you've been holding a lot together. I'm so glad you're here. Now we can do this together. Letting them know. So asking about their decision-making process, asking about their emotions can help calm people down. It may sound kind of funny, but if there is time for a pause, it's always okay to say, hey, let's go grab a cup of tea. Let's walk down the hall, get up, physically walk out of the room, trying to lower, Julie brought it up earlier that, when your brain is off doing something because of stress or other emotions, you're not going to think, that thinking brain is not what's online here. And so getting up and going on a little bit of a walk, bringing those emotions back down a little bit to a place that we're not so emotionally flooded, that we're so emotionally overloaded that, nothing's going to get done in this meeting. Taking a little bit walk, holding a warm beverage, that can be really helpful and calming for people. I actually do really like, Chia-Li, that you did speak to your, that's the thing. And I think this is kind of where we're going to go next, that for many people, as the financial advisor, some people are cool with people crying. Other people are very much not cool with people crying. And there's people everywhere in between. And so a lot of times when we're a financial planner or even a financial therapist, you're kind of in your own bubble, you're kind of in your own echo chamber, what you do and what feels normal to you, but that doesn't mean that's what's normal to anybody else, and clearly wasn't normal to your client. And so talking about it with like a few other people, like, how would have you reacted? This is how I reacted. Like, it's worthwhile to do kind of like a self-check, a problem check, and a client check, after each of those meetings, especially those ones that are, very emotionally loaded, because likely you are very emotionally loaded by the fact that this is happening, and it's going to change the way that you take in information from that meeting. So it's also important to lower your stress and anxiety. And even if it's not stress or anxiety, there's essentially two types of empathy. There's cognitive empathy and emotional empathy. Cognitive empathy is when, I recognize that Julie is sad, and I know what it's like to be sad. I'm not sad right now, but I know what that feels like. So I can empathize with her, but from a cognitive place. Emotional empathy is Julie walks in, she's crying, I'm crying. This really wears people out, as one might imagine. And it isn't necessarily super helpful to the client. If you're down in the mud with them, and while that may feel like you're connecting in some ways in an emotional place, you're also supposed to be there as the professional. You're like, whether it's providing sturdy leadership, well, like if you do yoga, like I do, and the yoga teacher's always like, I'm here to hold space. If you want to lay in child's pose, or if you actually want to do the pose, whatever, I'm here to provide the space. I'm going to be like the sturdy leader, and you are here to work your stuff out. You don't have to be down there with them. It's okay to just hold the space. It's okay to just facilitate. And so recognizing what you're picking up, how you're reacting, this also really matters to whether you can control it in that meeting or not, but going into a future meeting, how you want to react so that you can be there as a sturdy leader, as a space holder, as a facilitator for people to work through whatever it is that they are processing, both in a cognitive place and an emotional place.
So one of our participants is bringing us kind of back to the business side of things, and said that sometimes it's difficult to have clients see the value in financial planning. And so he assumed that adding behavioral finance will increase expenses. How do you explain the value prop, and how do you handle objections if in fact you charge more for behavioral finance? Or is that just part and parcel of how you practice?
I would like to hear what Julie has to say about this, but I have thoughts about this too. I know Julie runs a practice where this is in many ways at the forefront. So I think she has probably better real life opinions than I have knowledge of just what's going on in research.
Yes, I'd like to hear both, but from my perspective, it is kind of baked into our service offering. And I think what's one of the great things about kind of this shift, in addition to newer planners, particularly those who become CFPs, kind of these counseling and therapeutic skills being included in their training now. So it's just going to be, part of what you know.
Right.
I don't think it needs to be a separate thing, nor do I think clients are going to scope out an advisor who offers behavioral finance, because nobody wants. I don't even use those terms. It's just kind of baked into what we do, and I think from a value proposition, a lot of our clients come from referrals, and so ultimately we are deepening our relationships with our clients. I like to think it makes me a better advisor. To be honest, it makes me a better human being. I mean, the skills that I've learned through all of these various trainings in financial therapy, financial psychology, behavioral finance, it's made me a better parent, a better friend, a better wife, and I'd like to think a better advisor. And so I don't think, that it's mutually exclusive. And so if you are running a business where your clients send you referrals, and that's where you get a lot of your business, I think that's where you'll see perhaps an increase in referrals. And how we kind of run procedurally here is we have an associate advisor and 2 paraplanners that help. They're amazing, and they help with the technical aspects of preparing for meetings that free up more time for the advisors to be kind of revisiting notes and really delving more into these tools so that we're better prepared to use them with clients.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Julie.
Mhm.
There was one quick question. At what age do you think that people become wired in terms of money? Like,
Young,
it-
young.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
would
I've
say,
heard around age 7, by age 7, it's pretty much wired, who knows the exact age, but it's young.
yeah,
okay, thank you for that.
definitely young.
All right.
I will say, if we want to go on, that's okay. But I was going to just comment on a couple of things that Julie said and is doing from the research side, like what we know from that side. So Morningstar did a really interesting study. This was a while ago, and they asked consumers and financial planners to rank, like all of the things that financial planners do, including behavioral finance and coaching. And clients put it at the bottom. Obviously, financial planners put it at the top. And I think that in a lot of ways that Julie just talked about, where she doesn't actually say that she does any of those things, it's just a part of her practice. People, I mean, for the most part, financial planners are working with high net worth, ultra high net worth, accomplished individuals. Accomplished individuals don't really want you to tell them you need coaching. That's not a fun thing that they enjoy. And many times they're coming with like a few $1 million, like they've done okay, up to this point. And so to necessarily feel like, there's something wrong with you and I'm going to coach you away from it. Nobody likes this type of language, and it doesn't seem to work well to bring it up. Juxtapose that though with the information, like there was a brand new study that came out in like February or March of this year. So it's only been out for a couple of months by the people at Money Quotient and some researchers at Kansas State University. And they, Dr. Lawson and Dr. McCoy, and it was with Carol from Money Quotient, Indiana. Anyway, they interviewed a whole bunch of financial advisors and a whole bunch of their clients. And they found things like planner communicates recommendations in terms the clients can understand. 84% of planners said, yeah, I agree with that. 50% of clients said they agreed with that. Another one, planners are open to discussing the client's values most in life. 87% of financial planners think they're doing that. 50% of their clients agreed. And so when I know Julie, and I know the trainings that she's been through the Financial Transitionist, she's hung out with us at the Financial Therapy Association. Again, the Money Quotient people are excellent. I do really think there is something to having a tangible tool. You don't have to go at the client and say, hey, we're going to talk about your money scripts because you need money coaching. But doing money scripts or doing a values exercise, or, again, I know that Julie has been trained as a financial transitionist. And so she has like a document that they use to identify like how you want to be communicated with and what that means, into that relationship. Those clients going through that very tangible exercise, whether they internalize that or not as coaching and therapy, is very different than just being, my advisor is very actively and in a documented way, trying to get this information back from me. And so I think it's not, many financial planners believe that they are doing this. And I believe that they are too. I've never met maybe like one mean financial planner, and I've talked to a lot of them. And so I definitely think that most financial planners are asking these questions, but it is not necessarily connecting at the client level. And so I think having some of this training, having some of these tools, and just integrating it as a part of financial planning, but integrating it with much more intention, really changes the dynamic in the financial planning relationship.
That is our hope, right? So we're getting down to the wire here. We have 4 minutes left. So we don't have a lot of runway left, but we did want to cover 2 more important things. Julie was going to tell us about how her own money script impacted her financial practice, and Chia-Li was going to give us some tools and resources for financial professionals around a lot of the things that we've talked about, where to get some resources. So I'll let you.
Yes, I think given time, I will condense what I would like to say to really just encourage folks to do their own work. If this is something that you're interested in implementing, in whatever financial service role you have. I think it's not as impactful and perhaps maybe a little unethical to take folks where you haven't been yourself. And there's value in experiencing some of these tools for yourself. And I think these programs, various programs that Chia-Li will talk about, they do a great job of walking you, the advisor, through, developing your own sense of, your money history and using these tools and seeing how they feel being on the other side of the table. And so, for me, it's made all the difference in the work that I do with clients. So I would like to just encourage folks to look into that if it's something you're interested in.
It's hard to show up for others when you're working out your own stuff. And many financial planners have an origin story that goes something like, this happened to me when I was younger, or I watched people go through this at this particular time, and I didn't want that, so now I'm this. If you don't think that impacts how you give advice, you are wrong. And so it's very important to just understand, what do I believe? What do I think? And to Julie's point, like, to take a client further than you've ever taken yourself is hard and probably isn't the best way to do it. And so, yeah, and there's lots of ways to get this information, which I think Julie or Chia-Li will talk about now.
Right. And I just want to say, I don't think it's a shock to, it's not too far-fetched to say that folks who go into, financial advising do it for the analytical aspects and then are thrown into client meetings and are like, shoot, I didn't know I needed people skills. Right. And so, so it's good learning from that aspect as well.
So thank you, and Meghaan, for such an insightful information. So the tools that we do have available at the college here is that we will have a graduate certificate in financial psychology coming in spring of 2023. That comprises of 3 different courses. The first one is behavioral finance, and that's what Meghaan had mentioned earlier. This is where your cognitive biases come through. Then we'll take you through financial psychology. This is the emotional side of how you work with clients. And then last but not least, we will take you through financial therapy and counseling, helping you navigate with clients. So with that, there are more information is going to come out about the graduate certificate. We're just very proud to have Meghaan or Dr. Lurtz, who designed many of these courses for us. So we look forward to having you soon in this graduate certificate program.
I want to thank all of our panelists. This has been an amazing, amazing session. And I've learned so much from you ladies today. There was a quick question: when will they be able to hear more about, or where can they go for more information about the program you just talked about, Chia-Li?
Yes, so on our website, currently we don't have those information yet. We are expecting to have more information coming through possibly November or December timeframe, so be on the lookout. In that website, in the next month or so, we will also provide you with some sort of requirements who are suited to take this particular journey in terms of going through the graduate certificate.
All right, and if you know a woman working in wealth who should be an award recipient, please go to our website and nominate her for lifting up women and helping to increase gender parity. Thank you all for joining us today for the Center for Women at the American College. This has been a great session. Thank you all.